Folks, again, welcome back to 3's In. I want to take you around the pattern one more time, this time for a no-flap pattern, and then we'll pull up into a closed pattern for a full stop, and then we'll head back into the flight room. That being said, when you take a look at the T-38 sitting on the ground, I'll get the angle right here in a minute, you'll notice that the instructor pilot in the back sits about 10 inches higher than the student does. Well, that's all well and good until you get on final approach. Now, when you're on final approach on a normal landing, you might look at an angle something like that. With a no flap, it's exaggerated quite a bit. And that's in order to generate the lift you need because you don't have any flaps. Now, we would fly no flap patterns day in and day out, just a matter of course. I don't know if I ever remember hearing of an aircraft that had the flaps stuck, but we sure practiced for it. So that being said, the only difference between a no flap pattern and a normal pattern, actually there's quite a few differences. First is the speeds we flew. Considering a basic weight of 1,000 pounds, we would fly the final turn at 195 versus 175, and we would fly final approach at 175 versus 155. So things came a little bit quicker. You also had to be more cognizant of the sink rate because if you pull the power off too much, you could get into a world of hurt with the ensuing sink rate. So those two items were at the forefront of my mind when I'm working with a new student. The other thing is on final approach, as you're coming in, we always had advance. We had a wind of 210, 15 gusting to 25. So we would crab down final like that. Well, that was great because I could see out the left side of his windscreen. If the winds were the other direction, I was screwed because that's where the whiskey compass was. And that really restricted visibility even more. Anyway, it all worked out fine. I just remind myself that's another reason we get paid the big bucks. So anyway, you're coming down final at 175. Typically like to encourage them to fly red over wheat, a little flatter approach. And as you came across that threshold, not before, but as you cross the threshold, pull the power to idle because you were going to touch down then once you pull it to idle. There was just no getting around it. So you pull it back, touch down, and then lower the nose. And when you add power this time, the speeds are going to come a lot quicker because you're flying a lot faster. So just add the power, and pretty soon you're airborne. We would take off with no flaps because didn't want to risk of setting a flap setting something other than 60 or 40. Just leave the flaps alone. Just add the power and go around. Okay. Get down the end runway, request a closed approved. Up we go onto the inside downwind. Get up there, you want to maintain 240 or less. Check your gas, now probably around 850, 800, somewhere like that. And take a look at where you want to configure. Usually coming up to a beam the end of the runway, maybe a little bit sooner. Check the airspeed below 240. Gear, go to speed brake neutral and up, and then put your flaps down, checking 3 green. As you get to the perch, you call out Reno 17, base gear stop. So that told the controller you're going to be doing a full stop. Again, 175, 155, 175 around the corner, 155 on final. Now when we touch down, as soon as you touch down, when you touch down, your power's at idle, nose is up there relatively high, you transition then into an aero brake. We did not have anti-skid. And we would wear out these brakes like crazy, student training. So we tried to use aero braking as much as we could. We touch down, aero brake, you don't snatch a stick back because if you did, you could overshoot everything. Or you run a risk of two things happen, both of them nasty. One, you can catch the burner cans, and two, you could actually pull it airborne again. You don't want to do that either. Then about 100 knots, just start relaxing back pressure and allow the nose, it will very smoothly fly down to the runway at 100 knots, coasting to the stop. Check the brakes, make sure you're slow, and then taxi off and then head back to the chocks. Okay, so coming back to no flaps, I'm getting a check ride once from Joe Sturts. Now Sturts was the chief of check section at that time, and he tended to be a little bit of a nervous fellow. God bless him. Anyway, I was on a contact check when I was coming back through PIT, and for some reason or another, they swapped runways on us, or they failed to swap runways, and we had a 10-knot tailwind. So I'm flying a no flap with a 10-knot tailwind, which is legal. But anyway, and I said to Joe, and I could see he was more nervous than a whore in church. So I'm coming down there, and PIT is where we do our instructor pilot training. So I'm instructing him. I said, now, Joe, I said, you're perhaps not going to like this as much as I don't like it, but the book says with a tail, when we pull the power a little bit earlier than normal, and of course with a no flap, we want to be considerate of where we are by pulling the power. So I said, taking those two into effect, I said, we're at 175 crossing the overrun now, and I'm going to pull the power to idle here, and we'll see how this whole thing works out. And I could tell he was not comfortable. So I pulled the power to idle. Of course, I'd flown my red over wheat pattern, even though this was in San Antonio. It might have been red over the blue bonnets. But anyway, so I came across that runway threshold, maybe a foot, 18 inches or so, and pulled the power to idle. Actually, I pulled it to idle about midway through the overrun. And we touched down about 200 feet down on speed. Whoa, pulled that one off. Anyway, lowered the nose and away I went. So that was that story. I'm debating whether to tell you another story in this. Yeah, I might as well. I'm checking time, see how I'm doing here on time. I flew with a student who was a little bit of a smart ass, and didn't particularly care for him that much, but sometimes you get stuck with these guys. So we were toward the end of the program. Matter of fact, it might have been his last ride in the program. And I said something to him. Hey, John, I said, that actually was his name. I said, how about a beer on the last landing? He said, oh, you're on, sir. So I said, which one do you want, the first or the second? I'll take the first one. Don't ever take the first one, because in you taking the first one, it lets me see what the winds are, you dummy. So anyway, John took the first one, and he came around and flew a beautiful pattern, beautiful landing, touchdown, really nice. And then he added power for the touch and go, and off we went. And as soon as I said, I have the aircraft, he put his hands up like this. He's clapping his hands, just going, yay! And so forth. He says, I'll have a Bud Light or whatever it was. Okay, fine. So I just leveled off to get myself fired up, leveled off, went to burner, smoked down the runway. Up I came with a nice 3.5, 4G pull, snapped the wings into the close. Now I'm getting, the fangs are coming out, level off on inside downwind, gear, flaps, the 3 greens, base gear stop, and around the corner I'm coming. I came in, and I had gone to school on them. I came in, rolled out, came across threshold, power idle, and I must have been, I don't know, maybe 6-8 inches off the wheels off the runway. Just bringing it back, nose coming out, just rolled it on. And all I heard from the front cockpit was, son of a bitch. You gotta love it. Anyway, you could have fun with, I always did have fun flying with students, and even the smart asses, sometimes you could really have fun with them. Thanks for stopping in. We'll see you soon.